in now? Lovely. Yes. Thanks, Mida. Mida's just recording that. So we've got everyone joining. So I think I'll kick off. We're just a couple of minutes in. So let me just run through a few aspects of settling us in for this session. So welcome to the fourth of our Elevating Women in Leadership taster sessions. Thanks for joining us as we're going to explore this topic of adding strategic value. So my name is Orla Power and I design and deliver our Elevating Women in Leadership programs. And I'm joined today by Pauline and Nikki from the facilitator team here at LHH. So just to mention, on Friday, hopefully we all celebrated International Women's Day in some way, shape or another. And the theme this year was inspiring inclusion. So we hope these sessions are inspiring you to think about how you thrive in your careers. And inclusion is about providing that additional support where it's needed to create that level playing field for everyone. So by focusing on these areas that we're covering in these sessions that are particularly relevant to women, we hope that we can help to close any gaps. If you've joined us for any of the other sessions, then welcome back. If this is your first time, let me just quickly outline what we're doing. So we've run 4 taster sessions to cover what our Elevating Women in Leadership programs are all about. So the topics of career activism, confidence and resilience. Last week was impact and brand, and today we're looking at adding strategic value. And these are all based on our research into the behaviours and beliefs of women who excel that are around these 4 core themes. And we've been taking you through how we deliver our Elevating Women in Leadership programs and giving you as much insight and development as we can over the next 50 minutes or so. So for those of you thinking about your development today, we've created a worksheet. So hopefully that's been sent out so you can reflect on that after the session. So we'll refer to that as we go through. If you haven't, just drop us a line on the email address there at the bottom. Individual support. So for those joining for your own development, we do recommend, if you can, to find a buddy to talk through what comes up for you in these sessions. So someone around you in your workplace or at home that you can chat through what comes up for you. We do this on our programs, so everyone has a buddy throughout the program to support them, and also obviously to hold them to account for their actions and things that they're going to be doing. And then lastly, we're on a webinar format. So we do have a large take-up. It's lovely for so many of you to join us. But that means it does limit interactivity slightly. So we can't do breakout groups, but we can use polls and chat. So we'll be asking you to do that and get involved as we go through. And please do ask any questions and answers as we go through. We'll try and keep an eye on the chat. So I can see already some questions about the worksheet. So Mida's popped that in the chat. And as I say, you can contact us on that email below eWill at the bottom, and we can answer any queries through that as well. But we will have 10 minutes at the end to answer any questions and answers. We'll try and pick them up from the chat as we go through. So this is the last topic in our Elevating Women in Leadership programme. And before this session, you would have attended a discovery session. So that's an opportunity to share successes and actions taken since the last workshop. So here's your first activity. I know it's only a week, but please feel free to share any successes or actions in the chat if you attended the session last week on impact and brand, that leading with personal impact, run by Colette and Madeline. So if you've been thinking about anything you're doing to be more authentic, whether you've had a go at writing your personal brand, or if you've worked on sharing your personal brand, would love to hear that. Or anything about sharing your achievements confidently. I know Colette and Madeline talked about that. and maybe increasing your impact by perhaps not over apologizing or brushing off positive feedback. So anything you'd like to share, if you were at the session last week, that's been a success for you since then, pop it in the chat. We'd love to see that, and everyone else can see what you've been focusing on. As I said, the discovery sessions are really that opportunity to share successes and actions taken since the last workshop. And it's also an opportunity to bring any specific personal challenges or topics to the group for support. And by the time we're getting to these final discovery sessions, we would be encouraging the group to be facilitating these themselves and developing that skill so that they can continue to run these if they wish once the formal programme finishes. And we do find a lot of groups do continue to run these discovery sessions because they find them so valuable. And as I say, let's remind ourselves where we are in the programme. If this was a programme for first line or sort of junior leaders, we would usually finish it after 3 modules. So actually that leading with personal impact and discovery session would be possibly the end of the programme. But if this is for middle and upper middle, we would have this additional adding strategic value session. So I can't see anything in the chat about what people have put into practice. So maybe you're just reflecting on that yourself. So keep that in mind. And hopefully today we'll layer in some new things for you to be thinking about in relation to adding strategic value. So let's get going with this topic today. So we're going to start off by focusing on some of the possible headwinds to adding strategic value, then look at your current focus and how you're adding value, including saying no, and then how we can increase the visibility of our strategic thinking by how we communicate. So one of the things we know, research has shown that women can be perceived as less strategic. Not necessarily because the capability is lacking, but because some things get in the way, such as maybe what we pay attention to, where we focus our time, how we communicate, or maybe how we build strategic relationships. So just think for a moment whether, is it always you that picks up the action points in meetings whilst others maybe sit back? We think we're being helpful, but consciously or unconsciously, we're perhaps taking that role of doer or order taker, executor. And that can perpetuate being trapped in the weeds, whilst leaving time for others to move on to those more strategic activities. And over time, this can lead to false perceptions that women are best at executing, good at the details, essential to keep the ship running, rather than having that strategic capability to think longer term or contribute to the big ideas or influence the stakeholders needed for success. And we all know that simply isn't the case. Another headwind that women can face on this issue is how we're raised and socialized. So we can grow up believing that a good team player pitches in and helps, a good team player says yes, not no. And sometimes it can be hard not to swoop in and take on admin work when perhaps no one else is speaking up or when things aren't done to our standards. So today in this session, have a think about, do you add your full strategic value? Is the daily whirlwind sucking you into that tactical frenzy with little time to look out onto the horizon? So this session is time to just step back and reevaluate your true value and your focus around your activities. So when we're running this workshop, the first part is obviously welcome back because they're coming towards the end of the programme. And we'd just like to start this session with a little activity, getting you to think about what does being strategic mean to you in your organization? Because being strategic can mean different things in different organizations. So we'd love you to pop your ideas in the chat. What does being strategic mean in your organization? So as I say, means different things to different people in different organizations. While you're doing that, and we'd love to see your thoughts, here are just a few examples to maybe stimulate your thinking. So for some organizations, being strategic means having that business acumen. So knowing your business needs, knowing your business inside and out, and the wider context in which it operates. So the factors that affect its success, and not just your area, but right across the business. So in order to be strategic, you need a solid understanding of your industry context, the trends, the business drivers. So that could be one area. Another area could be about having a future focus. So knowing where your business is heading, how it wants to grow, and how you're contributing to that. So this is really about paying attention to organizational messages and continually aligning your workload, your objectives, your messages to your team, and translating them into what's meaningful for them. Focusing on new possibilities long term. So it's that thinking further out. It's switching on your radar and looking beyond the horizon, not to just what comes next. So I'm seeing a lot in the chat about big picture, vision, looking ahead. So that would be really this future focused areas and getting that alignment as you're mentioning. And then another area might be having a point of view on important topics in your area. So maybe 3 points on the impact of any current change that might be happening, maybe 3 trends in your work area. This is about communicating strategically. So you've done the thinking, it's about having your points ready to share. And strategic thinking should reflect multiple viewpoints, not just your own, but should show that you've read and interpreted information, you've considered the wider business beyond your work area, and you've really demonstrated a point of view. And we're going to come back to that a bit later in the session and give you some tips and tools on that. So I've seen some great things running through the chat that have come up. So having that big picture, thinking about vision. Let me just see what else is in here. Yeah, managing change, vision, forward thinking whilst managing the change, contributing to business strategy. Yep, lovely. Understanding the wider picture. Yeah, things that impact positively, linking strategy and heading and supporting it, achieving those business goals. Great, absolutely. So these are all different aspects of being strategic and what that might mean in your organization and to you. Perfect. So we'd all love to, and we're hopefully in this session because we're thinking about how can we be strategic and add that value, but things do get in the way of us being strategic. So Pauline, I'm going to hand over to you to take us through some of those things that get in the way for us.
Thank you, Orla. And really interesting to see that whole future vision, you know, thinking about the longer term impact of the business. And the reality is that there are some things that get in the way. So for us, there's 4 key buckets, I would say, that can be headwinds for women to being strategic. So we're going to run a poll in a few minutes. I'm just going to talk through the headwinds. Firstly, drowning in execution. So if you're someone who really likes to focus on getting stuff done, you know, one of those, if you want the job done right, give it to me. And then the reality is it's like a snowball. We just get more and more and more. It's a vicious cycle. Our job grows and grows. So it's really valuable to have a job laundry clear out. So every so often take some time to think, what am I here for? How do I add most value? Be really focused and really ruthless. The second one is multitasking. So we know all of this, you know, studies have shown that women are great at multitasking and that we do it a lot more. And actually, interestingly, most of us are proud of it. We, at the start of today's session, I was talking about, loads of stuff I had to do at the moment, and we can use it to our advantage. So let's not downplay that. However, the challenge is that multitasking can sometimes lead to less productivity. It can impact the quality of our performance and also poorer well-being. So it can cause us to become distracted, to become overwhelmed. It's like all of those tabs open on your laptop. It's going to impact the performance of the laptop. And it can also reinforce that focus on being tactical and come across as being quite scattered in our communications. The third one is control. And this one really resonates with me. I'd hold my hand up. So, are you someone who really wants to take control of tasks, and you can sometimes focus more on how and when something gets done, and also the level of quality, rather than really delegating it? Do you also have high empathy and feel guilty? Everyone's busy, so why should someone else do this? So if I'm worried about them being busy, I'm going to take this on, and I'm just going to be busier and busier. And then the fourth big area that we see is risk. So sometimes as women, we can avoid taking risks, whether that's really going out on a limb with an untested idea, or speaking up in a meeting, or taking on a role that we don't feel prepared for. So think for a minute, are you too cautious? Do you sometimes limit your ability to take risks? So we know that research indicates that when a job is offered or an opportunity, women won't apply until we feel that we can do 100% of it. But actually, men will apply when they feel that they can do 50 or 60% of it. And this means that we're getting in our own way. So we're going to actually lose out on some things. So Mida, can we run a poll? Going on to the next slide. Just think about which one of these barriers challenge you. So is it drowning in execution? Is it multitasking when we really lean into it? We're keeping control, avoiding risk, or wonderful if it's none of the above?
Mine's definitely multitasking, Pauline, I would say. I
Oh,
take on too much, have too many tabs open.
Yeah. It is so, you're going to start to hum like the laptop does after a while, Orla, when it's getting a bit plugged down.
Yeah, it's that feeling of you're just spinning too many plates.
Yeah. I talk a lot. It's like Jenga, and it's going to be the smallest piece that's, that we take on that actually we could have done in our sleep, but it's just way too much. And that's the risk, that is going to knock the whole pile down.
Yeah. I think the poll settled down, so we can publish that now, Mida, just so people can see. Yeah, there's two top.
Okay, brilliant, interesting. So drowning in execution, 53%, and multitasking over strength, 53%. So 1% none of the above.
Oh, amazing.
I applaud
Well done,
you. Yeah, absolutely. And 35% keeping tight control. So on the program, we would put people in groups to think about actually how can we overcome these? So what tips can we use to stop falling over in any of these headwinds? I'm really interested to know, so I'm going to run through some tips, but I'm really interested to know from you, when I run through these, which might work for you. And also, if you've any other ones to add, would love to hear it. So let's look at these tips. Let's overcome the headwinds to being strategic. So firstly, drowning in execution. I talked a minute ago about doing a job laundry. So clear out the tasks that don't add value. One thing I really encourage all of us to do is think about actually, what is success for me? And is this task contributing to my success? And this is something that's worthwhile doing once a year or once a quarter. Also, to-do lists. Let's accept we're never getting to the end of our to-do list. So make friends with it. Your to-do list is always going to be there as a constant companion. And the third big one for me is to help with a sense of achievement. Any week, any day, pick one big thing, 3 medium and 5 small. And when I say big, I mean something that has strategic impact. So let's pick that and focus on it. Apologies, I'm not going to run through all. Another one is booking reflection time and protecting it. Also blocking out reaction time. So I worked with someone previously who had 3 till 4 blocked in her calendar where people could pop in and chat. So that's a good thing to have. And then the final one is try a change of scene. So if you work from home, try somewhere else. If you're in the office, try work from home. So in the chat, which ones of these resonate?
Yeah, just pop a number in of the ones that you like, or anything else that works for you. I did, like you, Pauline, that one about reflection time. I think we had the same boss who had that time for talk she used to put into a diary. So it meant that I didn't reach out to her whenever. I was like, oh yeah, there's always, 4 till 5 or 3:30. So I would save it up. And obviously that was better time management for her as well. So that was a great one, I thought.
Absolutely, thank you.
Pauline, someone's very helpfully mentioned in the chat about the Eisenhower matrix, which is always a great thing to look at. If any of you have not had a look at that, if you Google Eisenhower matrix, it's a great way of working out what's urgent, important, etc.
Absolutely, yeah. And another one, not quite Eisenhower matrix, one thing I like to think about is that, is this going to be important in 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years? So that's a good self-check, and also it helps us be more future focused. What's lovely is quite a range of numbers there in the chat, so that's great that there's a number of tips that really resonate. So let's think about then drowning in execution. No, that's the one I've just done. Let's think about multitasking. So, and Orla, I'm interested to know which one works for you, but there's a few. So firstly is stay focused. Let's say I'm going to focus on this task for 30 minutes, an hour, and do not move on until it's finished. So task batching, absolutely, Sam. Yes, we definitely have a name for it now. And I think if you're someone who's really good at this, try reduce the time. Let's reduce the time and get the task done and then move on. Others, setting deadlines, relax your standards. So the reality is we want to aim for excellence, not perfection. I really struggled with something, gosh, maybe a year ago, and I had wise words from a person called Orla Power who said to me, aim for excellence, not perfection. Don't trip yourself up in knots over this. And really it was smart.
I think mine's number 3, Pauline, I would say, is I have to have a clear desk. If I've got something to work on, and switching off my email so that it's not popping up and I'm not getting distracted. That's my one.
Absolutely. Yeah, that definitely makes a difference. And also many of us are slaves to Teams at the moment. So putting your Teams on do not disturb or focusing is really important. Batching your tasks, someone's mentioned, and then scheduling multiple breaks. So someone has already said that. So get out and walk. Thank you, Janet. Great way to refocus.
Yeah.
Fresh air makes a big, big difference. So then thinking about keeping tight control. I'm not going to, well, I'll touch on all of these, but I'm trying to be less controlling on what I'm sharing with you that's already on the slide, because this is one for me. But really, every day, think about delegating. And not just, pushing stuff downwards, but some people might really enjoy or thrive on something that's sitting on your to-do list. The second one, linked to time batching, but breaking down some of your work into projects that will help others. The third one, which was an important one for me to learn, is reframe asking for help. So it's not about showing weakness. It's actually about developing others, about collaborating, about team effectiveness. Let's reframe and think about why we're not letting stuff go. Number 4, really important, is set clear expectations from the start and also give regular feedback. Orla said at the start about women saying no less. No has to be one of our most valuable words. Let's use it effectively and at the right time. And then, if you really want to do the work yourself because you enjoy it, really think about, should you be doing it? Go back to that, what is success for me? And be honest. Are you holding on to something because it's easy or because you can do it quickly, or does it really belong to someone else? So some comments: 3, 2, breaking work, reframing, asking for help. Oh, a lot of breaking work. And 5, oh, Jenny, thank you. 2, 3, and 4. I love that. There's, in any given day, we can use many of these, I believe. Then finally, avoiding risk. So this is a key one. So when you're in any interaction in a meeting, plan to speak and also think about your points, you know, think about the impact you want to have. So avoid responding and being reactive in the moment. For me, I always think it's important to think about, what do I want people to be understanding, thinking when they leave the meeting? And how can I get that across? Number two, use summarizing, really important to reiterate your message, saying yes to strategic opportunities, also starting small and building up, and partnering with someone. This is really good. It's so good to have a partner to sense check and perhaps get reassurance from.
Yeah, I think that second point, Pauline, particularly using summarizing, you know, if you've been in a meeting or a session, you think, oh, I haven't said much, or I haven't got anything additional to contribute because I'm agreeing with what everyone else is saying. I think using that summarizing is a really nice tool to get your voice heard and actually to share that you're on board. So you might say, oh, this has been a really great discussion. Can I just summarize what I'm taking away from what everyone's shared? And it's a really nice way of getting your voice heard in a meeting where perhaps you haven't had a chance to interject, or you haven't had something new to add.
Absolutely. And I see lots of threes resonating here. So saying yes, absolutely. Say yes, you know, work with someone if you need some support or a bit of a nudge, but also sometimes we do need to jump in and figure it out as we go. So these are all on your worksheet for you to reflect on. And I really do encourage you to take some time after the session and think about what strategies you can use, and also commit to do some of them, for example, by the end of this week, and see the difference it will make to your week and also how you feel. So in real life, this is about 60 to 70 minutes into our session. So it's time to move. We don't want to sit down all day. So we tend to have a break, have an energizer, raise the energy levels, you know, get some fresh air. I'm going to hand to Nikki now, who's going to talk a bit more about adding strategic value.
Yeah, thanks, Pauline. So once we've got you to focus on the barriers, then it's about, so what are you already doing and what can you do differently? And depending on the job that you do or your level in the organisation, not everything can be focused on being strategic. So it's really useful to consider what areas of your role are currently or could be more strategic. In what ways are you adding strategic value? Because whatever your level, there's bound to be an element of this in there. And it's also good to think about where you're heading with your, you know, maybe you're hoping for a promotion, maybe you're wanting to go to the next level up or sideways, where being strategic is going to be more important. So what does it mean for you in your role? And it could be some of the following things we've got here, or it may be others. Again, we're always interested to hear from you in the chat. Just to run through these. So translating strategy, maybe you're the person who does that for your team to help people to understand where the company is going and how they fit in, because of course that's really important in terms of engagement. It might be about prioritizing the work, you know, planning the work that your team does with a kind of longer term focus, or it could be about delegating, ensuring that the work gets done and that also you can pay more attention to the higher value work. And I'll come on to that in a moment. Maybe developing a kind of succession pipeline is what's really important. And maybe that's how you add strategic value. Growing the future leaders for the business? Or is it about kind of continuous improvement, reviewing work and ensuring quality? Managing change is, I'm sure, something as leaders we all get involved with. And this may be about, you know, refocusing the work as necessary based on the changes that the organisation is going through. Again, this is one of those unspoken expectations, I think, if you're leading a team, about raising the profile of the team and making sure that the team is visible and the rest of the business understand where the team sits and its importance in terms of the strategy of the business. And the final point we want to add in here is about sharing those insights upwards. And I think someone mentioned something about this in the chat earlier, actually, you know, that you, whatever level you're at, you're invaluable in terms of sharing insights upwards, particularly if you're closer to the pulse of the organisation, you know, the customers and what's happening with the clients, etc. So just looking at that last one, I just invite you to think about where you are at in terms of sharing insights upwards. Do you sit on the tactical end of the spectrum where you contribute ideas when asked, you share only when it becomes critical, or you innovate innovate under pressure, a new accent coming in there, or are you at the more strategic end of the spectrum, where you anticipate and share ideas proactively, sharing trends, impact and solutions ongoing, and regularly taking time for innovative thinking? So are you a 1 or a 2, or are you a 4 or 5, or are you somewhere in the middle? I'd love you just to put that in the chat, so we can just get a sense of that. And I can see we've got a number of 3s coming up in the chat. It's really interesting to hear that. Because the challenge is we often get stuck in the doing, and we have a reputation as being a doer. And yeah, I can see some of you are very much at that tactical end. We focus too much on the tactical execution, too much time working in the business as opposed to working on the business. And part of the pre-work for this session is you would have completed a self-assessment. So we give participants time to review this. And yeah, thank you for putting that in. I can see we've got people kind of all across the spectrum. And we would probably have a breakout at this point where we would get you to go into small groups. And of course, this is a fabulous opportunity for some networking with other people who are on the programme, to reflect on your strategic value assessment and to really think if there are any areas of your role where you could be adding more value. And of course, it's difficult to find time to think big picture when you're constantly task switching, or if your day is packed with meetings. If this is you and this is resonating, then you're certainly not alone. Up to 96% of leaders say time is the biggest roadblock to strategic thinking. And I use the word energy there because I like to think about, it's not so much about us managing our time maybe, but managing energy, which is another thing to think about. So we get you to think about in the pre-work, what is your current focus? What is the nature of your contribution? And are you too much in the doing? First of all, we think about high value work. That's the strategic activities that you need to keep doing. Then there's the low value work, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. And then the new value work, the strategic activities, the ones you have little or no time for yet. I come back to low value work because it's often referred to as non-promotable tasks. Harvard Business Review studies have found that women tend to volunteer for these tasks more often than men. When asked, they're more likely to say yes. And what we mean by the non-promotable tasks are things like, it might be organising a social event, it could be filling in for a colleague, it might be serving on a low-ranking committee, or taking on more routine work that doesn't require much skill or produce much impact. And these can have serious consequences for women in terms of promotion. If they are disproportionately saddled with work that has little visibility or impact, it'll take them much longer to advance in their careers. So it's good again to, I'm hoping you've got your reflective heads on and you're thinking where you are on this kind of spectrum. Where are you spending a lot of your time? And I guess what I want to say is that the solution is not necessarily about women declining more work requests, but it's more about asking for ways to distribute tasks more equitably. If you always take the minutes or write up the actions, maybe suggest everyone takes a turn. I can see we're just going to have a little look in the chat because I can see we've got a few comments.
Yeah, someone said that they do feel that women get asked to do more lower value work than men.
Yeah.
Do volunteer more. Yeah,
that's helpful, Donna, thank you. And I think it can become a self-perpetuating thing, can't it? People get used to women saying yes, and then so people ask women, so it's kind of how you can stop this. And if you feel that you're doing things that are not adding the right value, then it's about identifying some strategies. And this is where on the programme we talk about the 4 Ds. The first of these is about deleting. Are there things that, maybe it's a standing meeting that you have that isn't achieving anything? Maybe you don't need to be there and it's not adding the right value. So have a think about what could you delete. In terms of delay, is this about renegotiating project deadlines? Are there things that, you could delay so you can stay focused on other more important tasks? Distributing to other people, this is an interesting one for me because I think sometimes we don't distribute because we for various reasons. Maybe we don't want to land work on other people, maybe we feel we can do a better job, but it's good sometimes to think about the impact that's having when we don't kind of share out what we're doing. So can you distribute the work to someone who's perhaps better suited, or maybe they've got more time? Is it work that actually, you know, someone else can be doing more effectively than you? If you don't have someone to delegate to, maybe it's about saying if, you know, if things can be shared out amongst your peers, but it's really just asking those questions. The final one, diminish, is probably the most important or the most valuable of all of the strategies. Work can snowball and things can become bigger and kind of more cumbersome. So do you have a meeting, for example, that's now grown to a kind of 2-hour meeting where half an hour would be actually probably more effective and people would be a lot more focused? So it's just taking that moment to step back and reflect and review and do that ruthless prioritization, which is where I thought the mention of the Eisenhower matrix was very helpful earlier on. Orla, am I missing anything in the chat at the moment?
Yang has just said, how can we tell if it's high value or low value work? So high value is we say it's really adding that strategic value, and low value, I mean, we've all got low value work to do, but it's when it becomes disproportionate and you're spending more time in that lower value, where it's not, you're working in the business rather than on the business.
Yeah, helpful, Orla.
Yeah, and it does. Jada said people could have a different opinion on this. Yes, absolutely. So these are things that what we're giving you are prompts to discuss with your peers, discuss with your manager. I think that's a really good question to go to your manager and say, what of my activities do you think add the most strategic value? Because there may be a difference. There may be things that you think are adding that value and they don't. So a really useful conversation to be having.
Yeah, good point, Orla. And I think this of course can change on a regular basis. What might have been a priority last week or high value last week might have changed this week. Yeah. So that regular conversation is really important. And of course, part of all of this is about saying no. And here's the kind of challenge, really. Even when we know what we should be focusing on, it can be difficult to maintain that focus with new activities coming in all the time. And this may be something you perhaps you don't find difficult, but we know that a lot of women can find it difficult to say no. And it's understanding, you know, is it having a discussion about when saying yes is strategic and when saying no is strategic. So this is something we look at in more detail on the programme. What situations make saying yes strategic even when we have no time? What situations make saying no strategic? So it's really good to think of a time, you know, when you needed to say no and the impact that it had. What could you have done differently in that moment? What will you do differently moving forwards? So we get participants to think of an example, and we do some really practical exercises around this. So as we've seen, saying no can be challenging, and how you say no is very important. And I think often people think of this as conflict. It doesn't have to be conflict. And of course, conflict can be a really positive thing. And that's something that sometimes we need to change our mindset on. So, you know, a couple of tips really to think about. It's good to acknowledge what the other person is saying. It's good to say no, say why, and to offer an alternative is really helpful. So it's perfectly possible, as we've put here, to say no politely and clearly. I would love to have helped, but on this occasion, I'm saying no. It's good to practice this. Good to practice this at home, actually.
Yeah, with the bins, Nikki, with the bins.
I have with the bins. So, I mean, an example that springs to mind on a recent programme was that we had a participant who shared how she was the only woman on a senior leadership team, and she was always offering to take the notes. And she realised that this was kind of pigeonholing her into the doer role, but she felt trapped and it was just expected. So she made a change, and at the next meeting, she started with saying that she would prefer if note-taking could be rotated. So she wasn't saying no, she was just suggesting a different way of doing it to enable her to concentrate on contributing more. And she said she'd be happy to take her turn. And also in terms of chairing the meetings, to rotate the chair as well, which I thought was fabulous. Small change, but a powerful impact. And Orla, I think at that point I'm going to hand back to you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Nikki. So yeah, hopefully now you're all thinking about situations and thinking about the strategic no when it's appropriate to do that and how to do that. So as Nikki said, that sort of activity and thinking would take us up to lunch. So just before the lunch break, we get people to walk and talk away from their screens about the areas that they need to strengthen in some of those situations. And as Nikki said, this activity is on your worksheet to do after the session today. And we give everyone an hour for lunch to get away from their screens and have a proper break. When they come back from lunch, we aim to have speakers on each of the workshops. We've talked about this as we've gone through these sessions. So women like to learn through hearing other stories and experiences. So we'd have a speaker at this point who would share what being strategic means to them and some of their tips around what they do to say in that adding strategic value space. So hopefully what myself, Pauline and Nikki have been sharing is getting you thinking. So the last part of the session is really, hopefully you've got a lot of ideas and strategic thoughts going around in your heads. A challenge can be expressing them to others in ways where you come across as strategic. So you might be doing the strategic thinking, you've freed up your time, you're adding that strategic value, but are you actually communicating that so people see you as adding strategic value? And it's not about using big words or sounding smart. It is about linking to your business goals and the things that are important in your organization and really showing that business and commercial acumen. So to make our strategic value more visible, we can think about our language, so the words that we use. And it's also important to pay attention to what is valued in your organization and make sure you reference that when you're speaking. So, for example, if I'm talking about one of my projects, I used to focus straight away on what the project was about, why it was interesting, and the difference it was making for the client, until I realized that the first question I was usually asked was, what's the value of the project? How profitable is it? So clearly revenue and quantifying with numbers is valued in my organization. So now when I'm talking about my work and projects with our executive team, I start with the value and profitability of the project, so I can demonstrate that financial acumen front and center before I then move on to what it's about and the value that it's adding. So again, as Nikki said, a small change, but it can make a big difference. Also think about your delivery. So it's about speaking clearly and concisely, and also with energy and presence. So I know Colette and Madeline talked about that at the last session, about impact and brand, about our tone, and about how we express ourselves and our body language. And then also another way to communicate strategically is to speak with a point of view rather than an opinion. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So let me explain a bit more. I've mentioned this a couple of times, so I'd like to just share a little example to sort of bring it to life. So imagine that you're at a talent review meeting to discuss the top talent in your teams and who to invest in for the coming year. And your colleague has just finished praising someone on their team who's a real technical expert. And you start to feel triggered or an emotional reaction because you don't think that person should be considered as a high potential. And here are two responses. So one response is an opinion and one is a point of view. So let's just look at the difference. So response one, personally, I don't think they're high potential. What I've seen is their inability to be a team player. They don't respond in a timely manner, they don't listen to input, and they contradict teams' decisions in front of senior manager. So is it just me, or does anyone else think this? So opinions are a personal view or judgment formed about something, and opinions often start with, in my view, I think, I feel really passionate about. So in this response one, it starts with, I don't think. So we're really on the track of an opinion. Whereas if we look at response two, so I've got some additional information that might provide a different perspective. Our business has evolved considerably. Our customers have higher expectations. So technical skills are a minimum, but we also need to think about an individual's ability to influence, collaborate, lead a cohesive team. And these are things that I just haven't observed as a strength of this individual? What does everyone else think? So a point of view is a position or perspective from which something is considered or evaluated, such as in response to. So I've some additional data that might provide a broader perspective. Our business has evolved, technical skills are a minimum. Let's also think about, what does everyone else think? So these are all indicators of that point of view. So a point of view puts what you're saying in that broader context and connects the dots. And it starts with something bigger and broader before getting into the weeds. And it feels more objective because you're providing insights based on what you've observed, experienced, read, analysed. So I want to give you a simple mental model that you can use and practice with to build and communicate a point of view. So when you're thinking about answering questions, I'm going to give an example question. So imagine you were asked, how are we doing on our diversity strategy? So when you're asked a question and you think about, how could I respond with a point of view? Start off by thinking about reflecting your knowledge of what's been asked. So what are you bringing to your answer to this question? So in this example, you're building your credibility. You know, I've got experience on this topic. I've done this before, you know, on a previous project I worked on. You're reflecting your knowledge and experience of what's being asked. Then you're connecting it to the bigger picture or the broader goals. So why it's important. So you might say, well, you know, according to our diversity strategy, we've set various targets, or in this case, our goal is to provide more exposure and diversification. So you're showing that you understand what that bigger picture is for your organization. And then you can make choices about how you're going to respond. What are the things that you're going to share? And try and think of at least 3 things that you can share that are different bits of information. So in this example, you could share something that you've observed, something that you've seen, something that you've personally experienced. You could share some feedback, either from clients or from stakeholders. Or it could be some research, something that you've read, a book that you've read, something that's in the news, a report that's come across your desk. So the point is that you're choosing different bits of information that support a view or thinking. And then finally, ask a question and listen to the response to further build your point of view. So what's your perspective on this? So I hope that's a useful tool. It's on your worksheet. So hopefully we'd love to see you practicing and starting to experiment with, even if it's only parts of this, before you work up to all 4 aspects. So on the workshops, we give participants the chance to practice. And as I say, I've put it on your worksheet to think about. So we're going to challenge you to set a goal for making your strategic thinking more visible. So maybe pick 2 or 3 days in your week and think, okay, I'm going to really focus on making my strategic thinking more visible to others. So we've covered quite a lot today in all of the different bits that Nikki and Pauline and I have covered. So just to summarise as we come to the end of the session, and love to hear in the chat if you pop a number in any of these that have resonated with you today. So pop which number of these 10 things might resonate. So we've talked about focusing on the wider organisational goal. So perhaps putting a positive slant on messages and why what is being asked is important. Don't operate in a silo, so use your strategic network to gather information and gather different perspectives, have those conversations. Have a regular job laundry, so think further out, that long-term perspective. Identify your long-term vision and what you're working towards. And as I say, that regularly reviewing your strategic value, that job laundry. think about a well thought out point of view delivered with presence. So think about what impact you're having. And as Pauline mentioned earlier, do that thinking. Maybe make a few notes in your notebook so that you can grasp those opportunities when they present themselves, and you've got something prepared that you can share that's well thought through. And that links to the next one around thinking ahead so you can display confidence. Have those key messages ready and look for opportunities to get them across. And are you seen as strategic? So build your reputation, look for ways to increase that visibility of your strategic thinking. And if you don't have opportunities in your current role, look at how you can get them. A sort of mentor or a sponsor might be able to help you with those. And if you want to create more breadth, if you want to broaden your business and commercial acumen, think about lateral moves. And this can be a really good way. Moving across a business to a different area can really help develop that breadth. Or just ask a lot of questions. Talk to as many people as you can right across your business. And really keep on learning about what being strategic means and what your business thinks of in terms of strategy and what it's doing. So lots of, I can see some numbers coming in. Thank you. A lot to reflect and build on. Thank you. So some of these resonating with you. So if this was our programme, we'd send everyone away to have a conversation about what they've taken from this session. And then obviously we wrap up in the main room all together. So we've come to the end of the programme, and at the last discovery session, so following this workshop, we'd have a final discovery session to bring everyone together to really celebrate, share success about the programme. We get everyone to look forward, so we get everyone to share their leadership vision, so how they personally want to thrive going forward, which is always really inspiring. We also look at sustainability, so how to maintain connection, so those buddy and discovery sessions. Many groups sort of stay together. They maybe book to meet again 1 year on, and they keep up an active communication link. And it's always an opportunity to share that learning. So we like to invite line managers back to hear what the group have learnt. And some groups invite other women to join the last session that they think would benefit, so they can hear what they've learnt and what they've put into practice. And everyone who attends our programmes, all those participants are invited to join an exclusive LinkedIn Ripple group where we in the team regularly post insights to keep the learning alive and promote that connection and sharing amongst that alumni of those that have attended programmes. So I know we can't have a big group graduation today, but I would like to invite everyone who's attended these sessions and got something from them to share their learning with another woman. So we'd like to think that there was a ripple effect from these sessions that really lifts and inspires other women. So share what you've learned, share the reflection sheets. You're really welcome to do that and maybe have those conversations. So I hope that's given you a flavour of how we deliver our programmes, as well as started your own thinking. And we really encourage you to pull together your thinking from today using the worksheet. So really think about what being strategic means for you in your organisation, your goal for becoming more strategic and working at the right level, and think about how you communicate strategically and make your thinking more visible. So Meda's just going to run a poll, so we'd love to know how you found today. And I'd love to mention about a couple of sessions. So we've still got 2 more sessions, although we've covered the programme and these 4 topic areas. I hope that you've enjoyed these 4 weeks and you've been able to reflect on and remove any of the headwinds that have been getting in the way. As I mentioned on the first session, one of the behaviours we identified of women who are successful was that they believe there are no barriers to advancement, or if there were barriers, they've worked out ways to get around them. So we hope you have too. And we'd love you to join for the 2 more sessions coming up. The next session next week is about allyship. So everyone is welcome. So if you've got managers, got other people in your team that you think, hey, it would be really good if they understood some of these headwinds, we'll be running a session specifically for everyone, just talking about the headwinds and what everyone can do to be a good ally for women. And then we've got a final session. If you're thinking about mentoring, either wanting to get a mentor or be a mentor for other women, then do join us for that final session. That would be Pauline and myself. We're looking at mentoring and how to do that successfully for women. So hopefully you found that useful, and we'd love to see you again at the next couple of sessions. So I'm just going to check whether we're just going to stay on. We've got a couple of minutes left before we close, just to check whether there were any questions. I can see someone asked, is the allyship session at 12? Yeah, it's exactly the same time, 12 till 1. That's next Monday. As I say, do feel free to forward the invite to others if you think it would be useful. I'm thinking men, obviously men and women. It'd be great to have a lot of men join the allyship session and also the mentoring session. So do forward that on to anyone that you think would find it useful. Mida, can I just check, were there any questions in the Q&A or anything that we didn't pick up in the chat at all?
There are no questions in the Q&A. There was a question in the chat that I picked up that I don't think was answered, which is, how can you influence your male counterparts or leaders to stop asking females to do non-strategic tasks and break that mindset?
Yeah, really, really good question. Well, I think the first thing is to challenge that and have a conversation about it. And some of the tips that Nikki gave about, well, you know, I'll do this particular aspect. So I'll do it once, but then perhaps maybe someone else can take a turn next time, is a really good way of addressing that. I'll open it up to Pauline and Nikki. Have you got any thoughts, Pauline? I
would say it's an interesting one, because obviously you can manage your response. You can't manage them asking. However, you can, and I know Nikki was talking about the right way to say yes or no, but you can say absolutely, but I wonder, would, you know, Tom actually like the opportunity to do this, because I've done it the last 2 times, or who else would like to volunteer? I think it's a maybe and response. Nikki, what about you?
You come off mute there. You're still on mute. Hang on.
Sorry, there was a comment in the chat from Jenny Henry, I think, about you know, when if you rotate the task and give other people, or suggest that other people take on the low value work, it gives the men in the meeting the opportunity, I think, to either enjoy the exercise or at least to understand what it's like doing those particular tasks. I guess what also comes to mind is, there's something about influencing here, isn't there? And if you feel you can't influence, or you don't want to challenge that person directly, it may be that there's another man who's already on board with the way of thinking, and you can encourage them to influence their male counterparts. So I think there's something about being strategic in your approach here, knowing who's going to do it best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question there about joining next week. People need to formally register. I think they do need to register.
I think they do. I think you can forward the invite that you've got, but when they go in to join, they'll be asked to register. So that's just a security aspect of running these sessions.
Yeah. And Nikki, Jenny has agreed with the point you made about her point.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, that's a lovely point to finish. So thank you everyone for joining us. We'd love to see you next week, same time, same place. Have a good rest of the day.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.